Hello fellow Dragon Ball fans, how are all of you doing today? I'm the Swagkage and welcome to another episode of Dragon Ballogy. Today on Dragon Ballogy, I'll be discussing another of the most prominent parts of the Dragon Ball lore, power levels. The topic of power levels is a particularly interesting one because of how confusing it is. Not a whole lot is directly stated about power levels in the manga or the anime of Dragon Ball Z during the short time that they were used throughout the series, and as a result there have been a lot of holes in the concept that fans are left to fill in on their own. This has led to a bunch of speculation, as you'd expect, not only about how power levels work, but also about the specific power levels of certain characters at certain points. Now, I don't want to dive too deeply into this without first explaining what a power level is. Granted, the term is kind of self-explanatory, so they don't really need an explanation, but hey, whatever, I'll go ahead anyway. So, a character's power level, in its simplest form, is more or less just a summarization of what that character's physical capabilities are. Inherently, power levels don't necessarily refer to the numbers produced by scouters, contrary to popular belief. Power levels can be read through many different means, and with many different units of measurement. The Z Warriors read power levels by estimating the size of a target's key signature, Android 16 uses a built-in computer system to estimate power levels, Babidi reads them using a measurement called Kili, etc, etc. Regardless of how a character measures power levels though, the purpose is generally the same universally, to get an idea of how powerful a certain person is. Of course, the most popular method of measuring a power level is through the scouters of the Tuffles, and it is this method that most Dragon Ball fans often associate the concept with. As far as this variant goes, a power level is a number meant to represent, as expected, how powerful a certain person is or what they are physically capable of. Power levels are read through the scouter, which is an ocular device created by the Tuffles. Scouters are used for communication, mapping, and of course, power level measurement, among other things. When the Tuffles were later exterminated by the Saiyans, the latter began using these scouters along with the rest of the Tuffles technology, and this technology was eventually even further spread to the Planet Trade Organization when the Saiyans were inducted by Frieza. Throughout the series, power levels were only really ever a major part of the story for two arcs, the Saiyan and Namek saga, as by the time Cell came around, nobody felt the need to use a scouter anymore due to their ability to sense ki, and quite frankly, scouters weren't really around anymore. Now, as I was saying earlier, power levels are incredibly confusing, and this is partially due to two things. The first cause is, like I said, how little was actually explained about power levels in the manga and anime, and the second cause is how they were handled by series author Akira Toriyama. While the in-universe creators of power levels were the Tuffles, the person who thought of the concept in real life was the author and creator of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama. The reason he created power levels was what you'd expect. He thought it would be easier for manga readers to understand a character's power if it were represented in the form of a number. However, this created an issue. Toriyama thought that if readers were given two concrete numbers showing the strength of two opposing characters, it'd make the series more boring because the audience would already know who the winner of a fight would be. For example, if Fighter A had a power level of 10,000 and their opponent Fighter B had a power level of 5,000, then it would be obvious from the start that Fighter A would win the fight because of their higher power level. So to solve this issue, Akira Toriyama decided to give the Z Fighters the ability to lower and raise their power levels by manipulating their ki, and that is one of many reasons why power levels are so confusing. Some of the other reasons are as follows. Power levels don't have a defined measurement unit, and what I mean by that is it is never stated what number power level is capable of doing what. For example, something's weight is measured in pounds. 1 pound is very light as opposed to 100 pounds being very heavy. Speed is measured in kilometers per hour or miles per hour. 1 mile per hour is relatively slow, whereas 100 miles per hour is relatively fast. With a power level, there's nothing like that. You don't know what a certain number inherently translates to. Again, going back to the previous analogy, a car moving at 100 miles per hour will move 100 miles in 1 hour. Whereas we, the audience, aren't educated on what a character with a power level of 100 would be capable of doing. Yes, it is possible to estimate what characters are capable of what by comparing their power levels, but there is still no concrete method of measuring what exactly a power level's number means. I think the largest reason power levels confuse the fan base, however, is the fact that scouters are stated to be unreliable by a handful of characters in the series due to characters suppressing their power levels. This has led some fans to buy into the misconception that power levels are by and large completely useless and unreliable tools for measuring a character's power, which simply just isn't the case. The reason scouters are said to be unreliable by characters that can manipulate their ki is simple. The numbers produced by the scouters are often too low. Most of the time, because a character suppresses their full power level, the scouter's reading is gimped, and as a result, the user of the scouter is misled and thereafter underestimates their opponent. A good example of this was when the Ginyu Force believed Goku's full power level to be only 5,000, when in reality it was 90,000. However, when a scouter correctly reads a character's power level, the number that is produced there is in fact a reliable tool for measuring a character's power, like when Captain Ginyu measured Goku's power level at 180,000 at the same time that the Ginyus thought his power level was just 5,000. Just because power levels can be very useful tools for determining just how powerful a character is, doesn't mean they're perfect measurement tools. The issue with power levels is that there is a lot they do not account for, like speed, intelligence, technique versatility, skill, etc. And this is an issue present across all forms of power level measurement: scouters, Kili, ki sensing, what have you. So, in a battle, even if character A has a higher power level than character B might still be able to win as long as they can trump their opponent in terms of skill. Of course, to get a better idea of how power levels work, we have to delve into their actual applications in the series, see what power levels were applied to what characters at what point in the series. So, here we go. Power levels made their debut in Dragon Ball Z's very first manga chapter, when Raditz used a scouter to measure a random farmer's power level, which was read at 5. They were subsequently used as one of the series' key components all the way through the Saiyan and Namek sagas. The last power level ever recorded on screen was Trunks' heavily suppressed power level, which was, like the power level of the farmer that met Raditz, read as 5. Things started to get a bit ridiculous as the series progressed and the characters got stronger. There is an exponential increase in power levels from the start of Dragon Ball Z up until the end of the series, and I'll give you a list of confirmed power levels to give you an idea of what I mean. Raditz's power level was 1200, Nappa's was 4000, and Vegeta's was 18,000 in the Saiyan saga. Rakum's power level was 40,000, Ginyu's was 120,000, and First Form Frieza's was 530,000. Frieza's final form, according to the Daizenshu, had a power level of 120 million at full power, and Super Saiyan Goku had a power level of 150 million. There are plenty of different sources with lists of various power levels for characters after this point, but most, if not all of them, are completely non-canon and unreliable. The most well-known example I can think of is the V-Jump scan that lists the power levels of Cooler, Broly, and Gogeta, which I've seen a lot of people cite all over the internet. According to this V-Jump scan, Cooler's power level was 470 million in his 5th form, Legendary Super Saiyan Broly's is 1 billion, and Gogeta's is 2.5 billion. Now this information would be pretty nice to have if it was accurate, but the issue is that it isn't accurate because these power levels are inconsistent. There's no way these power levels can be accurate, and I'll explain why. In the Cooler movie, Goku beat the shit out of Cooler after transforming into a Super Saiyan, and since Cooler's power level was 470 million, that means Goku's had to be a lot higher. It's never stated, but for the sake of argument, I'll just go with something as close to the original power level of Cooler as possible, and say that Super Saiyan Goku's was 500 million. Now, let's calculate how strong Goku would be if he were to transform into a Super Saiyan 3 here. I won't worry about factoring in an increase in power due to training because I don't need to. Instead, we'll just find out what Goku's power level would have been if he had somehow miraculously gone Super Saiyan 3 against Cooler here. Like I said in the Super Saiyans episode, Super Saiyan 2 is twice as strong as regular Super Saiyan, so we double 500 million and find that Super Saiyan 2 Goku would, here, without training between arcs or anything, fresh after his fight with Frieza, have a power level of 1 billion. Super Saiyan 3 is 4 times stronger than that, which would make Super Saiyan 3 Goku's power level at this point a solid 4 billion. The reason that makes no sense is because that, according to this scan, Super Saiyan 3 Goku would be almost twice as strong as Super Gogeta, and that's without factoring in how much stronger it got between the time of Cooler's Revenge and the time of Fusion Reborn. Obviously, Super Saiyan 3 Goku is not stronger than Super Gogeta because Janemba was obliterating Super Saiyan 3 Goku, while Gogeta managed to one-shot Janemba, so that's an example of how sources like the V-Jump are kind of inaccurate. There are plenty of other sources that attempt to measure power levels across the series, like Dragon Ball Z Scouter Battle Taiken Kamehameha, Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle, the pamphlet that came with the 3rd Dragon Ball movie, Mystical Adventure, etc., but there aren't a whole lot that are credible. The best 3 sources are the actual series, interviews with Toriyama, and the Daizenshu, and any other sources aren't really trustworthy in my opinion. The most official post-Frieza Saga power level reading that I can think of is the 100 quintillion power level that Golden Frieza supposedly had. The thing about that is that 100 quintillion was a pun, because when he was asked about what Frieza's power level is, the voice actor said something like, Frieza's power level would probably be 100 quintillion because he's a nice guy, and Naisu guy is a pun on 100 quintillion when speaking Japanese. So, you know, again, not canon, not reliable. Of course, there are also plenty of non-licensed sources that attempt to calculate Dragon Ball power levels, and when I say non-licensed sources, I'm referring to fan speculation. There are thousands of videos, forums, message boards, and that sort of thing where fans speculate about power levels, and some of the speculation is honestly pretty solid. I think the most notable and popular fan-made power level list you'll find on the internet is the YouTube series made by Vegito1089. In any case, power levels are a pretty fun concept to play around with. Speculating about them is pretty fun, especially given how ridiculous some of the feats get near the end of Dragon Ball. All that said though, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to rate, comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe for more Dragon Ball content in the future. This has been Swagkage, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.